After a stroke, there are really two different realities happening at the same time. There's the clinical one, what doctors can measure on a chart, and then there's the survivor's reality, all these invisible internal feelings that just don't show up on a standard test. Today, we're going to dive into how an ancient practice might just give us a modern map to bridge that gap, to translate what a patient is feeling into a real framework for treatment.
Just try to imagine feeling that every single day. This is a direct quote from a stroke survivor, what we could call their lived data. It's this powerful, high-resolution symptom that most recovery metrics just completely miss. And that's the real challenge, right? How do you even begin to treat a feeling? So to get our heads around this approach, we're going to look at it through two lenses. And what's interesting is they kind of tell a similar story. The traditional view talks about these energy pathways called meridians. Think of them like invisible channels running all through the body. The modern view talks about stimulating specific nerves to actually change how the brain and body are talking to each other. And as we go, we'll see how this modern science gives us a whole new way to read that ancient map. So, here's our roadmap for today. We're literally going to take a journey through the body, from top to bottom, stopping at 6 key regions. At each stop, we'll see how specific acupuncture points are chosen to address that unique internal data that comes directly from a survivor's post-stroke experience. Okay, first up, the head and scalp. We're starting right at the command center, the brain itself, to tackle one of the most disorienting experiences a stroke survivor can have. So check out the precision here. The stroke happened in the right thalamus, which affects the body's left side. So the treatment targets the motor line on the right side of the scalp to match. But the goal isn't just about getting movement back, it's about remapping the brain's entire perception of that limb. This goes straight to that bizarre and frankly terrifying feeling of limb non-ownership, where your own arm or leg feels like it belongs to someone else. Next, we're moving down to the jaw and face. Now, this might not be the first thing you'd think of after a stroke, but for a survivor, all that localized tension can turn simple things like speaking or eating into a daily battle. And right here, you can see a direct link between a physical target and a functional problem. By targeting points ST6 and ST7 right there on the jaw, the idea is to release that deep muscle tension. And this isn't just for comfort. It's about managing what we call physiological risk. The real-world result? It can help ease jaw opening resistance, which makes speaking easier, and it can even help with secondary issues, like a chronically dry mouth. Okay, next up, the neck and throat. You can think of this area as a critical communication bridge that connects the brain's commands to the mouth. When a stroke damages that bridge, some really fundamental functions are suddenly at risk. What's really fascinating here is the strategy. Sometimes it's all about one single perfectly chosen location. The point REN23, located right under the chin, is targeted to help re-establish that neurological bridge. So the therapy isn't just about strengthening the tongue, it's about restoring the signal from the brain, directly tackling those disruptions that affect clear speech and, crucially, safe swallowing. Now, we've mentioned this term a couple of times, so let's just pause and define it. Physiological risk management. This idea totally reframes what recovery is all about. It's not just about regaining the ability to lift your arm. It's about listening to the body's really specific internal signals, that pulling, that coldness, that buzzing, and using that data to actively stabilize the entire system and hopefully prevent other problems down the line. All right, on to the hands and wrists. Now, this might seem a little strange at first. Why on earth would you treat the hand to fix a problem with speech? Well, this is a classic example of what's called distal treatment. Points like Li4 on the hand and HT5 on the wrist are on pathways, or meridians, that traditional theory says connect all the way up to the face and tongue. From a modern viewpoint, stimulating the nerves in these spots sends signals up the chain, affecting functions far away from where the needle is. It's kind of like using a remote control on your wrist to improve how your mouth moves and how clearly you can speak. Now we come to the torso and abdomen. Think of this as the body's core operating system. This area controls all those automatic functions, like our internal thermostat and digestion, which a stroke can just throw into complete chaos. So, how do you regulate that chaos? You go right to the core. Points like REN4 on the lower abdomen are used to manage this dysregulation. The traditional term for it is warming the center by boosting what's called yang energy, the body's active warming force. But the real-world application is incredibly concrete. It directly addresses symptoms like feeling severely cold all the time, or that sudden urgent need to use the bathroom the moment you feel a cold draft. And finally, we arrive at our foundation, the legs and feet. This is where we circle all the way back to that very first sensation we talked about, that constant, distressing, internal pulling feeling.
The strategy here is to tackle that feeling head on. The point GB34 is famously known as the influential point of the sinews, what we'd basically call tendons. Targeting it aims to release that deep internal tension. The result? Better stability, a feeling of being grounded in your own body, and most importantly, it directly counteracts that chronic internal tearing sensation, tying the treatment right back to the survivor's most pressing personal experience.
So, this entire journey through the body really leaves us with a pretty big question. This framework suggests a kind of radical empathy in medicine. What happens when we start treating a patient's internal feeling, not just as a subjective complaint, but as precise, high-resolution clinical data? Well, it opens up a whole new possibility for healing, one that doesn't just repair the body, but also validates the survivor's entire reality.